Hi, please excuse my voice. I've had some sinus issues this week and allergy issues, which has caused me to lose my voice somewhat. Luckily, the video was done before all of that took place. Uh, our district has had issues with the 504 process due to a lack of uniformity and a lack of consistency. The district superintendent and assistant superintendents charge each campus with creating a process that aligns with the district, and therefore we will create that uniformity and consistency needed to avoid the OCR complaints that the district has experienced this past year. This process is associated with Superintendent Standard Number 2, which is a learner-centered standard, learner-centered leadership and school district culture standard, where it states a superintendent is an educational leader who promotes the success of all students and shapes school district culture by facilitating the development, articulation, implementation, and stewardship of a vision of learning and that is shared and supported by the school community. This is also relative to competency number 2, which states that the superintendent will shape district culture by facilitating the development, articulation, implementation, and stewardship of a vision of learning that is shared and supported by the educational community. In the video that follows, you will see me outlining the 504 process that I was responsible for developing. In the video, you will see campus leadership, district leadership is also present in the background, supervising the process and just making sure that we are in alignment with what the district expectations are. All right, I was going to send it electronically, but I had meetings, so I had to change. I'm going to have to change some things, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give the guys black and white color. I'll copy the ladies to get the color copy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. All right, so Charlie, we're coming up a process that's still in line with the district, still addresses the differences that we have here on our particular campus. So if we go through it, we gotta make sure, because he's clearly, I've been instructed in no uncertain manner that I'm the one being held accountable. All right, so couple of changes. So actually, there's some things, if you remember from the meeting we had, I asked, well, there's some things that we can incorporate that might make it a lot easier on us when we were having a discussion about the councils and everything. As we go through it, you'll see that the councils are incorporated. There's certain processes in here. I've actually met, gone through it, and seems to be okay. Okay, so that's a good thing. If we go with, we can start looking at timeline. That's going to be a change there, because right now it's biennial every 2 years, like we do 9th and 11th graders. But that he wants that change to where we go into annual, which is Alexander kind of hinted that that's the direction they want to go in anyway, because it's a best practice. So that'll be a change that I have to make on this document here. Instead of biennial every 2 years, it's going to be transitioning to where we have that meeting with them every year.
But not till next school year?
Well, we're gonna have it this year, and then next year you're going to, yeah, so I'm gonna say, yeah, so we have the ones we're gonna have this year.
And it's biennial for this current year.
Right, so we'll do 9th and 11th graders this year, then I'm assuming that next year, it's just, we're gonna kick in and doing all of them.
Okay.
But I think it's 9, 10, and 11.
That's funny, because they just changed it the year before last to go into every other year.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing every year for a decade.
Yeah, she mentioned that in one of the trainings that I actually went through, the district training, and she made mention that, yeah, they're looking at going back to doing it annually. Okay, so if we go down here to procedures by position, according to Mr. Johnson, we're next start, right now we have Danny Jones and Worley that feed into us. He said next year it'll just be Danny Jones, so I don't know what's happening to the kids at Worley. Are they going somewhere else?
Truthfully, Worley's closer to Legacy, but I don't know. I don't remember how the attendance zones were.
They go to, Worley
Come on
kids
out.
go to Legacy, Mansfield, and Lakeridge.
Mm-hmm, they do.
All right, so my responsibility there, I will request documentation from those kids, those students that are coming over, and then distribute them to the appropriate AP based on alpha. Included a few documents here. If you want to check to see if a student is coded as 504, You know, for somebody that might come in that don't know how to use Scout, y'all might have a different way of going about doing it. But, you know, clicking on students, student profiles, with the examples here with the arrows, and then as you can see, we get to the third page and you'll see a 5 there, then we'll already know that it's coded as 504. Now, this is one topic that's up for discussion right now. If we do that and they are not coded 504, what is the suggestion? Do we suggest that we have the counselors do it, or if we have the file already, we know they're 504 and we see that they're not coded, do we go ahead and code them?
I think we go ahead and code them, because it's pretty easy to do, and, I mean, they're gonna be on our list, and we'll have the 504 plan.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know how to do that.
It's easy. Shane.
Yeah, and I seen that, cause she has some documents on how to actually go through that. It's in that 504 stuff folder.
I think it just depends on who's the first contact with that person. If they're new enrollees, is that something different? Cause right now,
Yeah, that's on the next page, right?
once we check the list, if they're not on there, then we can code.
So the only thing we upload then is the accommodations?
What you mean by upload?
You said something about uploading, if they're
And
not
it's Skyward.
504 in Skyward?
Because we share our 504, and that's not changing, is it? I mean, I could be wrong, but our 504 plans, the way we share those with teachers is through Skyward.
Right,
So that if a kid gets a schedule change or whatever, it's in Skyward, it's attached to that kid.
right,
So what we've done in the past is, when I say in the past, what we started doing last year is we would code the kid 504 in Skyward by making them a 5,
mm-hmm,
and then we'd upload the plan into the
Right.
attachments.
right,
And that was what we did. That was all we did, if I
Okay.
remember correctly, right?
right,
Now we have to get a teacher initial.
right. Now you have to get the teacher signed.
And we still have to do that for current ones now, right?
Yeah, if you've uploaded a plan and sent an email out to the teachers, yeah, you still have to go get them to sign saying this.
No, I'm
this is-
saying for currently right now, for the ones that are, just for documentation, do we have to do it for all of the current students?
Who are designated as 504?
Yes,
Yeah, teacher has to sign saying that they have the documentation.
okay,
We haven't-
okay. Did that happen before I get here, or I got
We
here?
haven't done it.
No,
Okay, so we
What
still
is- so
need to
what-
do that.
We
So
have a
what-
form.
So she got us in, so
form.
the kids in 10th grade,
Uh-huh,
who's not gonna get a 504 plan this year,
uh-huh,
the teachers need to sign, they receive that kid's plan. Like our 10th graders, our seniors, who we don't do plans for, they're not on the plan year.
and they're 504 students and teachers y'all hadn't
I'm
required them to sign?
No, they've never, since
they
I
live in
went there
Skyward.
1 year.
Because it's in
They
Skyward,
live
it's
in
attached to the
Skyward.
kid.
And then each 6 weeks, they provide the accommodation. It's a good practice, but
So
we
it
just
was
need a
up to
form
the
to
teachers
do
go
it.
through.
Yeah, it's the Form G to get.
They gotta,
Oh,
during the first part of the school year, when they're doing their in-classroom, meetings, that's what they need to do, collect their 504 students and know what they have, and then they gotta sign off on it before school even starts. And that's fine, we just need a uniform form to do that.
Okay,
And so then we have that on file that they acknowledge that they've looked at Skyward about their 504 kids.
okay.
So,
And I'm
So if you have
I'm
that-
actually talking about everybody,
Yeah.
not just,
All 504 students.
The 504 students, yeah.
that
okay,
can
cause you
look
were only
at
talking
Skyward.
about,
Close use for 10th graders, cause it's an off year, they don't know plan, on 10th grade year.
The purpose of that is that the teachers acknowledge that they have the 504 student accommodations.
yes, but they
look.
still have last year's plan. We don't renew it, we don't, okay, I'm confused.
yeah, but it's different.
But it's a
teacher from
different
us.
teacher, they had the same teacher last year.
Correct.
Right,
They're just acknowledging they know who their 504 students are.
right.
So, but Nita,
Okay, I'm still, hold on.
So if they had me last year, and I signed the form saying, hey, this is
Yes.
my 504 student, I signed saying that, yes, I have their documents, and they leave me this year, and they have you next year, then, yeah, you signed the form saying that you received their documents, because they didn't have you last year.
Yes, but you were saying only 2 of the grade levels, I'm talking about all the grade levels, so 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, all those teachers need to sign for,
She was wrong. She didn't, it was
Okay,
part, it was part of
okay.
the conversation.
Sorry,
You're
it was a-
wrong. It's just.
okay, so it's everybody, okay.
I would
Thank
say
you.
since they're
Sorry, I
going,
couldn't go on
since the
before.
plan is to go annual anyway, it's probably the best practice to do. Yeah,
So-
so it's a form they call Form G that You know, you just take them around and they sign it. If you wanna do it electronically, send an email and they respond, that's fine too, but that's just more sheets of paper. You know, you might have eight emails saying that I received it as opposed to one document saying, because once they sign it, then you will upload that into Success Ed under history.
Oh, okay. How do you guys wanna do it?
So, does that acknowledgement form have to be uploaded to Success Ed? I'm assuming yes. Nita mentioned, and I asked her this question the other day, that over the years, I set up for a couple of different campuses, a SPED acknowledgement form.
Yeah.
And she said we could still use that, so the question is, how do we, if we wanted to do it electronically, we could, but then we have to have something to upload. Can we just upload a link to the responses? To the form? We may have to ask Nita if we can do that, cause that makes it really easy.
Do we have, you know how SPED has their SPED folders with,
Their
it's all
IEP
online?
Their
and-
IEP tree, we don't have that for 504. I set up the IEP tree years ago, and they still use it,
Yeah,
but it doesn't work as well as it used to because it's kinda gotten mismanaged,
okay,
and I stepped out of it.
okay.
But SPED does a very similar thing where they have to acknowledge that the teachers have seen it.
Right,
Yeah, I set that form up
So
too.
you can just borrow what they do, cause they do it electronically.
Yeah, I just set it up for Mansfield High yesterday.
Okay.
So it's definitely, whether or not you have a, I'll say go around and get all the signatures, or you go and get the signatures.
That's a violation of some
Yeah,
kids'
yeah,
rights.
can't have it.
That's a FERPA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if it's okay with y'all, I can ask Nita specifically what we're allowed and not allowed to do with that electronic form, because if they're using it for special education, surely we can use it for 504.
When you say electronic form, what exactly, so?
Yeah, let me show you.
So are they not physically signing a document, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
But they're acknowledging they received it.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's an acknowledgement thing. Let me show you, I'll give you an example right here, the one I set up for Mansfield High for SPED yesterday.
Because even in the training with all the other, because everybody else, of course, that was their counselors, they all say they take it around and they let them sign it. They don't even chance it.
So, what this is just this IEP, this is for an IEP, not a 504, but acknowledgement, verification of receipt. So, you email a link to this form to your teachers on your caseload. So let's say, here's how I'm envisioning this. You're in Skyward, you're the AP, little Johnny's got 504 plan. You click on email all teachers, you put the link in the email, all his teachers will automatically receive the link, okay? And then the teachers click on the link, they fill this form out. Yes, I received the accommodations form. I understand I must maintain a record. I will contact the student's case manager, which in this case would be you, if there's an issue, and then the teacher types in their name. And then when they submit that, that will go into a responses form that looks like similar to this right here. And it will give you this teacher said yes, this teacher said yes, this is just a sample. And so it lists all the teachers that said yes, they received it and signed their name.
Mm-hmm.
Now, then you can just filter it to your specific kids. And there's no walking around, signing in stuff, whatever. It's pretty straightforward. I've done it for years and other things. And
Can we also have them fill out the name, so we can then sort it by name?
Mhm.
And then, because if we just have a whole list of teachers and we gotta look up who's.
I would have it set up with the name and the ID number and everything like that. The teacher over at Mansfield wanted it this way, because she's doing it just with her group of kids. And that was it, it's just one case manager. But I've done campus-wide before for IEPs and it worked well.
Does it mean you're gonna set it up for us?
I'm gonna let Rob do it.
We'll check on it there, because what I have found out is that one of the biggest issues is that, yes, I did have OCR complaint, I did see the file on there, and so that's part of the reason for some of the changes there, so they wanna go through that again, so I saw the file, which was paperwork about this big, in which they're gonna have to come over there, so whichever way is gonna foolproof it, to cover behinds, then that's the route that we're actually gonna go with, so doing it electronically, so you're gonna have a sheet with a list of names that you gotta go and cipher through it, and then upload that into Success Ed?
Well, I think what you can do is, you can set up where it automatically filters it per kid, just like I did like per AP,
Mhm.
for the attendance, and detention form. You can set it up where it would filter per kid if you wanted to. You could also set it up where it would automatically provide a PDF, and you could upload the PDF.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different options there. It just depends on how much they actually need.
Because when we get to the other page, you see like for the processes, a lot of that was pretty much taken, we had to go through, retype it, change the verbiage on it. But a lot of that was taken from the processes that were given to us by Ms. Alexander from the district. So in that process, they make reference to signing Form G, which is the form that teachers will sign.
Mhm.
So the catch is even though we have some differences in doing it a different way than what some other people might do, we still wanna stay as consistent with the district as possible.
I think it gives you an option to sign or to do it electronically.
Yeah, or, yeah.
It gives you an option.
In Success Ed, you know,
And Ms. Alexander mentions, some people do it electronically.
okay,
That's what gave me the idea, that's why I asked her about it.
okay. All right, so make sure that.
So think about in Skyward, when they actually select that student, that there might be a way from right there where they sign that they reviewed it.
Yeah, you would think that would be the easiest thing to do, but Skyward just isn't user-friendly like that.
All right, so for procedures for new enrollment and transfer students, does anyone have an issue with that? That's where counselor is kind of involved right now. I've already run it by Mr. Johnson. Has no problem with it. When a new student receiving Section 504 services enrolls on the campus, the council will notify the appropriate administrator based on alpha and the 504 coordinator of the new enrollee. The council will designate the student with a 5 in Skyward and upload the 504 paperwork that has been received by the student.
Perfect.
Who
So
will
is that-
email the teachers? Who will email the teacher?
That would go on the assistant principal once it's
Okay,
done,
so
yeah.
once we find out, we're emailing.
Yeah, once they notify us that, hey, we have a new 504 student, and they've already uploaded it, then we go ahead and then that way, however we retrieving the signatures, we can go ahead and do it. So he had no problem with that. Also, any questions on the second thing for procedures for students receiving schedule changes? We talked about that and he's in agreement with it. I just think that if the schedule changes, we won't know unless they notify us. I think that responsibility then kind of falls on the counselor to let us know.
And that's pretty much what they've been doing,
Okay.
no?
Not for special ed, not for.
Oh, I'm blessed to have Kim.
Yeah.
There's too many changes, then
So if a schedule change occurs, we got a new group of teachers, then they notify us and then we go and we make sure we get whatever, however we're doing electronically or paper to get the documentation from those new teachers that, they have 504 documents.
that's why it's probably gonna be better for electronically, because there'll be multiple schedule changes, there'll be initial signatures required, multiple schedule changes, and then second semester, sometimes there's changes. So each time you're gonna be running up to teachers getting signatures versus a procedure that they get used to, we can follow up with, but they signed the paperwork electronically. My preference, because there's gonna be maybe 5-6 times that you're gonna have to get signatures on one kid. If they move classes.
And so have you or will you sometime today talk to Ms. Lester about about the role that the counselors will play going forward?
Yeah, I'm gonna end up talking to her. But he asked a question actually, as far as the process for the beginning of the year or semester when they have mass schedule changes. So we gotta figure out what would be the council's role in that.
It should still be the same process. If the
Yeah.
schedule has changed, they still need to notify you.
Yeah.
I don't understand why that changes when there's, just because the quantity of changes.
Yeah, I didn't,
You know what I mean?
I didn't understand that question either, but evidently that has to do with something that maybe has already been discussed.
I'm sorry, that didn't click with me, what was that again?
At the beginning, it says at the beginning of the year, that semester, there are mass schedule changes.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot going on then, so what would be the council's role in that? Due to the number of changes that are actually occurring.
So,
I would say we resend our 504s out.
yeah, I'd say they don't make any more schedule changes after 10 days.
Mm-hmm,
So maybe at that point, we send them all out.
mm-hmm.
So wait till,
No, I would say that we don't wanna wait until 10 days in just to let teachers know, hey, this kid's 504.
Right.
But that's already gonna be available in Skyward, that information in the plan. So what we need to do is that we've never done before, and we did the same thing with SPED, I found this out the hard way one year, is at the beginning of the year, when we're meeting with our teachers, and we need to send an email out to teachers, and it needs to come from either you or Brandon that says, FYI, check in Skyward for kids who are 504. If this 5 is here, go here, click on the 504 plan and make sure you're following it. So that they're already starting to do that during that first initial 10 days. And then at the 10-day mark, we go ahead and we send out the acknowledgement forms to all the teachers, because at that point, the bulk, 99% of the schedule changes are done and over with. And so that would kind of capture on both ways, you know what I'm saying?
You should be doing that the first day before the kids even get in the class. And
Yeah,
that's-
so many
that's always
schools-
been- that's
yeah.
been the expectation.
I can do that on my end. If for my group of teachers, I'll put them in. I can let them know to check it.
I mean, really, that email
Because
should
it's
come
gonna
from the
be-
504 coordinator.
Yeah, or Pew, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just needs to come from, my whole point with that is just that, when we send an email, that's gonna be the same thing for everybody, we should just send it from one person, so it's consistent.
Sure.
And, consider when they're returning their accommodations pages, that they're coming from you, because we have some that still haven't submitted.
On that, yeah, we're talking about, he wants that on the individual AP. Yeah, he wants the individual APs to collect them and then they'll bring them to me.
So, but at that, like, it's 6 weeks, maybe there's that email coming from you.
To remind them, yeah, gotcha.
And then when they don't get it in a timely manner, we have a way to check to see who had turned those in, but
What is the due date on that? Is it the week following the end of the grading period?
Mhm.
Okay.
The following week, okay, so that following, okay.
that we're going to
We can
remind them.
remind them to check. Okay.
So I got a call from Finley and Bryce day before yesterday, and they asked me specifically about that process. When they're collecting the 504 accommodation forms from, your teachers come in and turn them in. So those forms, they're collecting them and they're splitting them up by AP. Okay, here, Mr. Planis, this is yours. Mr. Pugh, here yours. Mr. Gormgary, here's yours. Then at that point, our secretaries are tracking, who turned in what and who hasn't turned in what. And then the AP for that kid is the one that should be reaching out to the teacher and saying, hey, Johnny Arnold's my student. I do not have a 504 accommodation form from you, Mr. Ray, for this student. Can you please send it to me right away? Correct?
Right.
Okay, so we make sure that hasn't changed, and, because they're a little bit confused because we're over departments. And in the past, it has been the supervisor of that teacher saying, hey, we haven't received this, but that's kind of evolved now.
Okay. Yeah, but for departments though, that's just predominantly for discipline though, right? Everything else is based on alpha, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And so to take that one step further, I would think that if I've got a teacher who teaches math and they're consistently not turning in this form when I've asked for it, then I go to their supervising AP for their T-test and say, CC them on an email and say, I'm still not receiving this, so you have documentation that they're not doing their job,
Right.
like we do with anything else, right?
Right. Okay, so no questions on that. Okay, so this systematic processes for the 504 meeting, that's pretty much from the documentation from the district. Just had to go in and change, since everything falls on us as the assistant principal, so the language had to be changed so that these responsibilities are on each of us based on our alpha. Does anyone have any questions regarding any of that? If you glance through it. And some of the things that you see in bold are some of the recommendations that Ms. Alexander recommended, or some of them are probably a norm.
like I said, some of us are new to this process, or run this process, so, when gathering teacher input, it's key that she says, you know, even though we might have 1 or 2 teachers there, it's important that we have information, input from all the teachers. And then as far as when the teacher evaluations are sent out, the suggestion is that we request that we receive those evaluations at least a couple of days before the actual meeting.
Where did this language come from? The 2 weeks deadline on that.
Oh, that was a recommendation with, now you can have it should say no later than 2 weeks, but in the training, she said once the initial form is sent out, she recommends going ahead and schedule the meeting probably 2 weeks out. I mean, if you can do it sooner, I mean, that's kind of flexible, but that gives the parents enough time to make arrangements to actually be there. Cause that was the one request that came out. Once the initial document is said, okay, when exactly are you scheduling the meeting? What is the next step?
Okay, I specifically asked her, this has come up a couple times this year, and last year, and she said that there is no hard deadline on 504, because it's not as formal as SPED, but so that they're gonna default to SPED timelines, and she told me 45 days as a max, like to keep us legal. I feel like 2 weeks is not enough time.
45 days?
Like 45 days to keep us legal, yeah, like the maximum, whatever. But, and I would never extend it out that long, but I don't feel like 2 weeks after so a parent calls the counselor and says, hey, I think my kid should be in 504 because they're struggling.
Right.
And then from that date, the clock starts ticking and we got 2 weeks to get that done. That seems extremely short.
So the recommendation would be what then? Because remember, part of this process is what the campus expectation might be.
Understand?
Yeah.
I think
So
that-
even 45 days, even though it's 45 days is allowed, if you're
Yeah,
dealing with 30 kids,
Yeah.
then
45 days I think is way too long.
right.
I mean, I think that's the, maximum extent the kid's, absent for 30 days, whatever. But, because like, for example, I had one that came up this year who's on our leaver list, who I contacted the parent August 29th.
Mhm.
And it took weeks and weeks and weeks to get this information back from them in these forms. I kept calling and emailing. And then they started playing all kinds of games with us. And finally we got the kid in, but it took 6 weeks.
Mhm.
Could we say 2 weeks from the date we received the initial parent input form back?
I think that's reasonable.
Cause that's when your window starts. So
Right.
then we're not dependent on the parent to get it to us, we're dependent on when we got it. 'Cause that's
Right.
what kicks us off.
Yeah. I mean, my concern is just the numbers.
So our consent form, consent and the parent input form back, that's when our window opens.
So you wanna say scheduled 2 weeks
Yeah, if I were
after
scheduled
receival, after we
Yes.
receive?
Of the consent form and
Receival.
parent input form.
Yeah, I made up a word.
Receipt.
I like
Yeah.
it. Receival.
After we receive.
Parent consent and parent input form.
Parent consent.
I mean, we could just go off the consent form, but the
and-
parent input forms will take some long time to fill out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I just know, like in special education, if a parent requests and signs consent for an evaluation for special ed, then the DIAC has 45 school days to get that completed.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, any other, okay, so we got that documented there, any other, questions or concerns on that page? Okay. Okay, so one thing that will be changed is that we'll take out this emergency meeting, because as emphasized again, there is no such thing. Language will be added that basically to the extent that there are emergent circumstances that arrive, that calls the that initiate the 504 process.
Mhm.
That's what he wants put in there. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, looking at that, are there any questions regarding the responsibility there?
Yeah, a lot, but I'm not gonna go into it now.
And I hadn't done one in Success Ed yet, but from what I understand is that once you go through, it just kind of walks you through that to the next one.
It doesn't?
I would not say that's an
It
accurate
doesn't
statement.
do that?
It doesn't walk you through, no, you have to upload them in. Just like in the training, you gotta go through, you gotta download them in, it's just three, it's not that bad, it's okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So it's not like once you fill out one, it doesn't say what's next we're done?
You gotta know which one's
Okay,
the pool.
football, yeah,
But I
no,
mean,
for the
you
pool.
gave us which one's the pool, so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not that bad.
okay.
I may have to ask you that, because I already had a hiccup with my first one that I'm not sure where to go. The name of the form, it would be great if in Success Ed, the forms were named and numbered,
The same is,
and they're not. And so that's where it gets confusing, does this mean this, or does this mean that? Because there's
Yeah.
7 forms that mean the same thing.
But they have the same name, because you may refer like, it has the name, it might not have the number, but the name is the
another
same.
initial,
It has kind of the same name, it has a closely related name, and you gotta figure out, make sure it's the right form.
yeah.
And I assume that the biggest issue is gonna be initially putting them in, I guess, because once we have them in for the students, then you're going through an annual, it's already there, so
Right.
it's no longer, you know. over there.
Don't lock it until you're really ready to lock it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta do it all over.
Or call Miss Alexander or
Yeah,
somebody.
she said
get it.
she'll unlock it for you.
Yeah, or that, or, yeah.
So Peter, you're going to clean up some of the language and then send this back out?
Yeah.
Do I get another color copy?
Me too, please.
I thought I gave you a color copy.
No, a new one though.
Yeah.
Oh, a new one? Oh, yes, I will. I will use my toner at
I like
home.
color, I like color.
We can print
I have
them. There's a
laser.
color-
Yeah, there's a color
printer here.
copier right in here.
Is it?
Print from.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I use my color laser at
You'll just
home.
need to get,
See one.
Okay.
think
But I'm gonna
Andy
send it
has
out,
to
make
give
sure I
you-
send it out electronically as well. And then, of course, it's always, as we said, it's always fluid, so there will be other things that might be added. Of course, there are several different type of 504 meetings or whatever, but this is just kind of to create a process that, you know, if somebody decides to move on, whatever, somebody else comes in, you have something that you can go reference and you're not dependent on, you know, having to track people down, because everybody's gonna tie it up.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do that.
Yes, I didn't go to bed till after 1. That's okay, I'm good though.
This is my reflection of creating the 504 process for my campus per district instructions. I thought it was very beneficial for me. There's no doubt it was very beneficial for me. In the district that I came from previously, as an assistant principal, I did not have to deal with 504 from the standpoint of setting up the meetings, issuing the paperwork and everything like that. That was handled by the counselors, and we were notified of the meetings, came by, participated in the meetings, delegated resources, things of that nature. Here in my new district, there is a little difference, even though the district desires uniformity, which I think that with the procedures there will be uniformity. There's still some variance between campuses. On some campuses, the 504 process is run by the counselors. On the campus that I am currently a part of, the expectation is that the assistant principals run the 504 process. I can tell you that the challenges of this is that not all the assistant principals on the campus were receptive to their new responsibilities. Because of the responsibilities of assistant principal and the current duties that we're involved in, half of the assistant principals viewed it as additional work and saw that there would be time constraints on if this new role was taken over to where they had to where we have to run the process, do all the paperwork, set the meetings up, and do everything like that. We're probably the only campus in the district to where the assistant principals have to take on that major role, which that too becomes an issue because on the majority of the other campuses, the counselors still oversee the 504 process. So this was met with some resistance, which is which is a great learning experience because as a leader, how do you reform a process that has already been in existence to where now through reforming the process, people that are part of or were a part of their process now have new responsibilities. How do you get them to accept those responsibilities without viewing it as more work, to take away some of the dissensions? As leaders, of course, we have the ability, the autonomy or whatever to make it a directive. When it's all said and done, the process has to be completed and directives can be given to ensure the success of the process. But how can you tactfully do it to where when responsibilities are changed, those that are involved in the process are willing to accept that responsibility for the sake of the process to ensure its success? That is something that as a leader, I hope to continue to learn, to continue to talk to mentors about situations like that. It was I spent a lot of time on it, so it was a very beneficial activity for me. As far as I learned a lot about a process that I've been involved in, but realized I really didn't know much about it. I was just a participant and really didn't have as much knowledge about it as I thought I would have. So very beneficial activity, which will benefit me as a leader from this point on, especially when the time comes to where I become the campus leader as the principal, now familiar with a process that will be taking place on my campus.